Well, hey, biology. Welcome to lecture 2 in population ecology. We're going to do 3 lectures. Of course, the first one introduced us to population ecology, and then this one is limits to growth and human populations. Okay, and so here's some objectives. I would pause and read over these that you can understand exactly what we're trying to identify, what we're trying to describe and contrast and discuss. And so let's say that our ship goes down. Our entire class is on a boat, okay? And our ship goes down. And we survive. It's good news. And we have 2 choices. We can go to that island or that island. And for some reason, this island is abandoned. Which one would you choose? This or that? And of course, you're saying, well, yeah, I mean, that's an easy choice, right? I mean, there's homes and there's like water and it's, maybe even like a small golf course. I don't even know. And so, but it's all about when you're looking at these 2 choices, it's all, and of course it's a silly question, but it's all about resources. That's what you're thinking, whether or not you kind of said that word or not. You're thinking about which one has the most resources for us to survive. And so remember carrying capacity, that number that an environment can support. Well, limiting factors determine the carrying capacity. And so a limiting factor is a factor that controls the growth of a population. And there's 2 different limiting factors. There's density dependent, which means it depends on how many individuals per unit area there are. And then there's density independent, which it really doesn't matter how many individuals there are. It affects everyone pretty much equally. And so I would fill this out on your note packet, but here's the 5 things that can be determined, population size be determined by. And so competition, predation, parasitism and disease, weather, and disasters, natural disasters. And so density dependent ones is when the number of individuals reach a certain level, we start having issues surviving. Competition, so food and water and space gets scarce. Predation, population cycles go up. When there's more prey, predators have more food. When there's more plants or less plants, right? If there's less plants around, herbivores have to compete for that food source. Parasitism and disease, the denser the population, the easier a disease spreads. I know it's been a long time, but that's true with viral illnesses and like COVID and the flu and all of that. And so that's true with viral illnesses. Stress from overcrowding. I mean, it can lower birth rate. Stress happens in the natural world too. It's not just a human thing. And so higher death rates. Some organisms actually will, if it gets too bad, they'll actually sacrifice their young and eat their young. And so maybe even leave the area. And so a great example of this is Isle Royale. You definitely need to know about this example. This is like an illustrative example. It helps us understand kind of density dependent limiting factors. And so I'll show you a video about it in class. But Isle Royale is way up north, right? There's Michigan, Wisconsin. And so I do want to try to click on this if it works. And then maybe so, maybe not. Yes. And so you can see right here that there actually is a study. And there's like a team that studies the interactions between wolves and moose on Isle Royale. And it's really impressive because this is all about population. I can't write on the screen. But it's all about population ecology, okay? And so let's look at their annual reports. And so you can click on about the project. And every year they come up with an annual report about like what's been happening. And so let's take a look at the most recent one, 23-24. And so it's a really impressive report. It's something really cool to kind of think about. And this is science in action, right? And so, but you can see right here, look right here. And this is where I really want you to kind of like dive into, okay? predator and prey interactions, population ecology. They started collecting data in the 50s, and they've been collecting data ever since. But notice something. Notice right here where it gets really low. 2 individuals. Those are the wolves, right? And so the wolves got really high in like 78, 80 or so. Not enough food, so they dramatically declined. Okay. The moose got really high, and that led to issues like with their, furs and what they eat. And then they crashed due to competition. And then it kind of fluctuated, but all of a sudden, right here, you can kind of see that it got down to 2 wolf individuals, which is pretty crazy to think about. Of course, and then there was like inbreeding depression, which means like the genetics, like you're more likely to get deleterious like polymorphisms and SNPs and all that, which basically means like there's just bad genes in the population at a really high percentage compared to like a normal population would be. And so what they did, because these 2 wolves that were left were related. I think it was like an uncle and like niece or something like that as far as human terminology goes or whatnot. But genetic inbreeding, of course, it weakens the gene pool. You want variety in genes. And so what happened is the wolves were not going to recover from that. And so they had a choice to make, the ecologists and the scientists in charge of this place. And they actually introduced wolves from wild populations to keep the system stable. And so you can see like that dashed line right there. And so it's pretty impressive that they did that. So the best estimate of wolf population was 30 wolves in 2024. And it's pretty impressive. So right here, the sudden increase in wolf abundance between 2018 and 2019 as a result of 19 wolves being translocated to the island. Okay. And so it's just pretty impressive that you kind of see some of this stuff. And so here's like just them going through examples of, looking at wolves and, where moose were killed. And they go through and kind of track all this. And then here's population density. The moose are more towards the northern end of the island. It's a beautiful place. You can actually visit it. And then calves and all of that. And then they look at, participating in 1 week-long moose watch expedition, which involved backpacking and searching for the remains of dead moose. There's the skulls. But then they don't just take that. They also look at, weather and ice and other organisms and how other organisms are affected. Okay. And so it's really, and look, balsam fir, fox and hare, beaver and otter. I mean, they do a lot of ecological studies on this beautiful island and this habitat. Okay. And so Michigan Technology University, it's pretty impressive. And again, I'll show you some videos in class. And then, right here again, is just like a little older of a video, a little older of a graph. But being able to understand this graph is important, okay? And so the density of the 2 species is very much dependent on the density of proper forage. And so because of moose diet is 59% balsam fir, so if moose population is high, what do you think is happening to the balsam fir population? Oh, my bad, sorry. And hopefully you think like, well, yeah, it would be going down, right? And because that's a food source. Okay, parasites and disease-causing organisms feed at the expense, so parasitic, right? So, parasitism. And so parasitism and disease are density, sorry, I know it's not really on the line, but density-dependent effects, because the denser the host population, the more easily parasites can spread. Yeah, the more closer we are around to organisms, the more likely it is. And so here's the graph, right? And so when the wolves got super high, they obviously were running low on food, but also there is a virus that attacked the wolves around 1980. It was accidentally introduced to the island. The virus killed all but 13 wolves, and we would consider that a bottleneck effect. If you want to go ahead and like take a note on that, that's more of a genetics, like an evolution genetics kind of term. But, we greatly reduced the gene pool. And so only the 3 of the survivors were females. Okay, and so you can see like they never rebounded. Like they were way up here and they never rebounded from that. And then of course they crashed way down here to like 2 individuals. And so how about this? Would that stress you out? I mean, I get stressed just looking at that picture. I'm not sure exactly what's happening in this picture. Definitely looks like, everybody's desperate to get on that train and get out. Here's some soldiers down here. But it's that does not look like a good situation. And so stress from overcrowding, Pinellas County, on a lighter note, is the most densely populated county in Florida by far. And so too much fighting, some species fight amongst themselves as overcrowded. High levels of stress, which weaken the bodies. Yeah, I mean, that's like hormones and cortisol. Like it weakens our ability to fight. Even eat their own offspring. Okay? So density independent factors do not depend on what a population size or density. So like weather, hurricanes, natural disasters, seasonal change, human interventions, all of those are density independence. Okay? Now this just kind of means, if there's more organisms around, then a cold winter will affect them more greatly because there's more organisms around. But I'm not really going to try to trick you on that, okay? And so, here's some questions to kind of think about. We'll go through and maybe ask these, but we'll work on some questions in class, so don't worry about that, okay? Now, let's go to human population growth as we close out this Lecture 2 video. And let's read a poem. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread, then whipped them all soundly and put them to bed. Mother of the Year award, huh? And so there's a nicer version in like the Mother Goose stories and stuff, but I'm pretty sure that's the original one. And so this is all about human population growth. I will be showing you these videos in class. Are there too many humans on the planet? And, what's a Christian's response to be? Will we have like a epidemic of way too many individuals or anything like that? And then I'll show you some really cool videos about that. But here's like a biblical standpoint, okay? With human populations, we're going to talk about death. And death comes from the fact that we sinned. That God created this perfect world and he gave us a choice in his loving kindness and his sovereignty. And Adam and Eve chose to sin, chose to believe the lie that God was holding on them, that they needed to be like God. And then sin entered the world, and death through sin, spiritual death through sin. And thus death spread to all men because all sinned. We inherit that sinful nature. We inherit it from our parents, right? So if this is you inherit sin from your parents, and they inherited that sinful nature from their parents all the way back to Adam. And who's going to rescue us? Well, I hope the answer hasn't become, numbing and just, oh yeah, well, of course it's Jesus. But I hope you don't forget that it is Jesus. That God is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. But he can only do that through punishing evil, because God is holy and just. And he punished evil on the cross. He poured out his wrath on Jesus for us. I hope you don't get used to it. And so, should is an interesting word, but why should we care? Why does this stuff matter? And I'm going to talk from a Christian standpoint, okay? We talked about human population growth at the case study with China and abortions, especially sex-selected of abortions. Millions and millions of people live in trash communities around the planet. Pollution is affecting the quality of life. Malnutrition is affecting millions of babies right now. Would you drink that glass of water? And so Christians are called to care for individuals. Now, not every person is going to be able to go into every environment and bring healing, but that's why we are called a body of Christ. And we are all called to different things, but we must love others. Jesus said, people will know that you're my disciples for your love for one another, okay? And so for most of human existence, the population grew slowly because life was harsh. No AC, no grocery stores, wars constantly. Just read the Old Testament. I mean, it's just rough. It's just really, really poor. And so throughout human history, like scarce food and predators and disease and disasters and harsh environments, all of these limited the human population. But then all of a sudden, something happens right here, and it skyrockets. And of course, you see the graph, and it's the Industrial Revolution. And all of a sudden, life becomes really great. You start having mass production of goods and foods, and you have better living conditions and medicines and hygiene products. And all of that greatly extends life expectancy and life. And so the human population experienced an exponential growth. The trend continued through the Industrial Revolutions in the 1800s, okay? And so several factors, including nutrition and sanitation and medicine and healthcare, all improved. And again, this isn't history class, so we're not going to dive into crazy amounts here, but dramatically reduced the death rate. So people are living longer, they're still having as many kids, and they're dying less often, so the population is exploding, okay? And so can this growth continue? Is there enough resources? Limiting factors? And so population growth rates differ among countries. Birth rates and death rates and the age structure all play into predicting, so these are kind of like, helpful models, and understanding why some countries have high growth rates while other countries grow more slowly. And then this guy, Thomas Malthus, which greatly influenced Charles Darwin, he suggested that only war, famine, and disease could limit human population growth. War is still around, unfortunately. But one day God's going to say enough is enough. He's just waiting patiently for more people to turn to him. Famine and disease have been greatly reduced due to the Industrial Revolution and technology, okay? So this is, wow, that's really bad. So the blank is demography. And so the scientific study of human populations is called demography. And so it examines characteristics of human population and explains how that happens, okay? So this is going to lead to something that you definitely need to know, and it's called a demographic transition. I'll show you a video in class about it. And yes, you will learn about this in human geography if you're taking that class, or different history classes. But it has a play when it comes to human populations, and we're talking about human populations, okay? The demographic transition is a dramatic change from high birth and death to low birth and death, okay? And so right here you can see there's 5 stages, and you need to know what happens in each stage, okay? So you go from high birth and high death, and then all of a sudden, better medicine and better healthcare is happening here, so the death rate falls rapidly. Since children are living and not dying, people start having less children, and then stage 4 is low and low, and then stage 5 is very low and low. And actually stage 5 is when the population actually decreasing, because people are like, I'm good, I don't want kids. I'm good, I want to focus on my career, I want to focus on my job. And none of that is technically right now, we're not going to say that's a wrong choice. People are called to different things. But as far as human populations go, there are some countries who are declining in population, okay? And so age structure diagrams also help us understand how populations grow, because if a lot of individuals are in the pre-reproductive ages, then you're going to see rapid growth because of demographic transition. These people are going to live instead of dying because of better healthcare and better medicine and better hygiene and sanitation products. And then some countries are like, no, I'm good. Everybody has been living pretty well and all of that. And so they're like, I'm good. I don't really want to have children. I want to focus on other things, okay? And so the human population may level out to a logistic growth. Again, that's like the S-shaped curve, right? And become stable, if countries are currently growing rapidly complete the demographic transition. And so here's just another picture of it. And this is a little dated, so I'll probably show you an updated one in class, but I'm pretty sure Japan is over here now. But early expanding, crazy expansion. But I would like to think, look at these two charts. These two rows. Why are there changes? Well, many children are needed for farming. Many children died in an early age. Don't be callous to that. Some of y'all may have lost family members. Like, don't be callous to that. You know, death is a bad thing. And so children dying is a bad thing. And so we want people to live. And so religious and social encouragement, no family planning, okay, technology, products. But then we start expanding because the death rate falls. And all of a sudden, all these children who normally would probably perish now are living. That's a good thing. And so now we start falling in as far as having children go, because children are living and we have improved medical care and diet. Fewer children are needed. Fewer children die. All good things. And then family planning starts happening in stage 4 and 5. Good health. And then here's a key one that I want you to think about. Improving status of women. Great thing. Good thing. And so women now in these countries, instead of maybe the traditional roles back in these stages, having children, supporting the family at home, now they are going and having careers and leading nations. And all of that is amazing and great things, and good things. And so this leads to also lower birth rates. Okay. And so, yeah, we could have a lot of discussions about this, but I would just note in general the 5 stages and why it happens the way it does. And I'll show you some videos in class. Okay. So I hope this was helpful to you. This is lecture 2. And then we got one more lecture to go. Thank you so much for your hard work and dedication.